How's it going, everybody? Welcome to this week's video where we are taking a look at another Berserker build, but this one's a little different from the rest. This one's a glass cannon roll build that gets you over 3,000 fire damage on your character sheet. Without further ado, let's go ahead and see what items we got to make this happen. So starting off with the items here, we're looking at one item in particular that makes this build work as well as it does. We're looking at the item Extraordinary Cap, a true legendary helm that has a unique rune. For each item of rare quality or lower, all your damage element stats are increased by 21% up to 100% or more. So basically, just with this item, this is how we're getting so much elemental damage. You slap this item on with about 7 other rares, you're getting up to 700% elemental damage for your class. So for this case, we're running the Berserker, so we're getting physical, fire, frost, and lightning up to 700% damage for nothing. You can take this one step further, apply this as a rune to a rare helmet, and you get 800% damage, which is nuts. Granted, you're sacrificing the cost of good gear for shitty rare items, but it's kind of fun. And you pair this in conjunction with Skull Mask, another true legendary helmet and its rune. For each non-set item, damage is increased by 5% and goes up to 20% and a little bit higher. So, for example, you have that item on, you get 140 extra damage, because since we're using rares, the rares don't come in sets, so we don't necessarily have to worry about it. Just these two helmets, you can get crazy damage for free. So if you're looking for a budget build, this is what you're gonna get with. But we want to take this one step further. We want to see how far we can get with just using these two items together and see what kind of fun build we can make for either speed farming or just seeing how high of a mythic we could push with it. So the way we do that here, and to get over 3,000 fire damage, we are using the set Moon and Sun. Now before you get mad and start yelling at me like, Pickle, you're losing out on like 200% elemental damage and blah 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 blah, it doesn't matter, because with the Moon and Fire set, or with the Moon and Sun set, it does something amazing. So every time you use a fire skill, your frost damage is multiplied by 3, and every time you use a frost skill, your fire damage is multiplied by 3. So yes, we lose 200% elemental damage, which kind of hurts a little bit, but we gain effectively like 2,000% fire damage. So I think it's well worth it. And just by using this set, this allows us to push up to kind of some higher mythics. Keep in mind, this isn't the build that you're going to be using to clear endless dungeons or anything like that. This is just a fun little build to do some lower mythics, turn your brain off for a little bit, and just enjoy the chaos that's happening on your screen. And to make this build work even more, we are synergizing it around the rune Dragon Flame on our fists. This makes our Ember Shield, Flame Roll, and Flame Wrath deal 40% increased damage and have no cooldown. However, these skills apply a burn effect to the Berserker, dealing 1% of his total health per second, stacking 10 times. Burn lasts 7 seconds. So at the sacrificing a little bit of health, we get no cooldown on our Flame Roll and Flame Wrath, and they deal increased damage. This is basically where our build comes into play. We are using Flame Roll as our speedy get around bread and butter damage, and then Flame Wrath to just quickly burn down foes if we need to. Pairing this with the rune Dodge Claw on our offhand, utility skills also restore 5% of maximum health and mana. This is great for some survivability, but mainly we're using this for the mana, because granted we have no cooldown on Flame Roll. It costs quite a bit of mana, so we need a good effective way to be generating mana. And then getting into the other damagey type items here, we are using the rune Dragon Ring on our ring slot. Damage taken from burn effects now triggers Molten Veins. Molten Veins damage is increased by 13% for each percentage of health lost from any damage taken that triggers the effect. It's kind of a mouthful. But basically here, so since we're already taking damage, a little bit of damage from our Dragon Flame, we are pairing this with Molten Veins to add a nice little splash effect, an AoE burn effect around us every second that fire damage is ticking. So it's just extra free damage that we get while we're rolling through things, because the goal here is you don't want to stop, you just want to go, 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 and extra damage like that is going to help. And then pair that with the Molten Medallion, for example, On an amulet slot, Lava Blood deals 3% up to 3% increased damage for every 22 points of mana regeneration. Doing that way, you can get a little bit more damage. Otherwise, if you're wanting a little bit more survivability, you can go with the tried and true, which is the Frostborn Heirloom. This is perfect. It gives you a nice barrier. I think a lot of builds run it just because of how kind of that extra little hit you can take, which is good. So if you're trying to push those mythics, you know, use that, and maybe if you can, try to fit on the battle boots on your boots slot, and you know, you could get a pretty decent build. Otherwise, if you're using the Molten Medallion and then pair that with Flamebound, all skills also cast Ember Shield. Ember Shield increases health regeneration by 50% while active. This effect is tripled if the Berserker is on fire, and since we're on fire, we're getting an extra 140% increased health regeneration, which is nice. Wish it was mana regeneration, but you pair that with our boots rune Ember Shield. Ember Shield may now trigger on hit effects and increase mana regeneration by 100% while active. So if you're using the Molten Medallion, you could synergize that well with some nice extra bonus damage. Otherwise, if you're looking for survivability, Frostborn Heirloom, Battle Boots, if you can put it on there. And then lastly, the rune that we're using on our accessory is Cosmic, because this build needs more damage, believe it or not. Cosmic is a great rune. 30% maximum mana is converted into twice as much damage. So since we're using rare items for basically our accessory, weapon, offhand, chest, and boots, that's 5 total rare items that we can manipulate to our will. So basically that means max sockets, mana on every item that we can possibly get, gem strength, and from there it's just kind of whatever you want to put on them. So with that covering all the items, let's go ahead and take a look at the skills. Alright, so for the skill trees, we dip into Dragonkin, Frostborn, and Guardian tree. So starting off with the Dragonkin tree, we put 5 points into Dragon Heart, maximum health is increased by 20%. Then we go with 3 points into Ember Shield, 1 point into Incineration because we don't really care about it, but we do care about getting power within. Ember Shield also adds 12% overpower. Next, we drop in and grab Warm Blood, getting Boiling, Molten Veins, and Lava Blood, just for extra free damage on top of everything else that we're doing. And then we pick up Heart of Fire. This is a pretty good skill. While active in a slot, increases health regeneration and mana regeneration by 65% of the current range. And on use, cause an explosion dealing 195% fire damage in a 3-meter radius around the Berserker. And then also for the must-have Enkindled, Heart of Fire also adds 45% fire damage. And then getting into the bread and butter of this build, we're getting Flame Roll with Magma. We're skipping over Hot-Footed just because we don't necessarily need the movement speed, but you could pick that up to the Flame Roll, which is if the Berserker rolls forward up to 8.2 meters at 300% of the movement speed covered in flames. So you could do that for a little bit extra movement, but honestly, I kind of gloss over it because I don't really care. Then we come up top to grab Flame Wrath, picking up Dragon Burn and Unleashed Rage. Flame Wrath is a pretty good ability. The Berserker releases his Inner Wrath into a Fiery Nova, dealing a 1,526% fire damage to all foes within 8 meters. It's absolutely ridiculous. Since we don't have a cooldown on it, we can spam that to our heart's desire. And then lastly, to jump it down to the bottom, we grab Explosive Maneuvers with Destructive Maneuvers and Cooling Off. The reason why we do this is since we're doing fire damage, might as well pick up these 2 abilities, which is good, and then Cooling Off to kind of gain on our massive amount of frost damage as well. Like, granted, we're not hitting as much frost damage as fire damage, but it's still a lot of frost damage. So rolling over to the Frostborn tree, we put 5 points into Harden for 5% damage reduction, 1 point into Focus, 1 point into Rage Release just to proc it for the Frostborn Heirloom. We put 1 point into Crippling Cold and 1 into Frostbite just to put 3 into Frost Winds and 1 into Biting Winds. That way we can get them to trigger pretty much 100% of the time, and they do a little bit extra damage. And then getting into the core of the Frostborn tree, we're grabbing Glacial Roll, of course, because we need a good, reliable way to proc the Moon and Sun set. And then we go 3 points into Chilled, which is great. Foes struck by Glacial Roll become weakened and take 15% more damage for about 5.5 seconds. And then lastly, we'll grab Frostskin. When active in a slot, proves all resistances up to 20% at minimum rage, and at maximum rage, the resistance are improved by half as much. On use, freeze all foes in about 6 meters of you, completely stunning them for 3.3 seconds. And then lastly, jumping over to the Guardian tree, we have Endurance, reduce the duration of all negative effects by 15%, which is nice. We don't really care. We just kind of use it to progress further into the tree. Picking up Brute Force, Overpower is increased by 15% of the Berserker's current rage. And then Inner Strength, damage is increased by 10% of the Berserker's current rage. Then lastly, picking up Protector, while active in a slot, increases health by 20% of the current rage, and has a self-heal on use for 15% of the maximum health. And then lastly, we pick up Hunger. All the Berserker's attacks deal 25% more damage towards foes with less than 16% health remaining. So that is the skill tree. It's pretty nice. I enjoy it. I'm sure there you could probably min-max it a little bit, jumping over a few things that you may not need. So then lastly, looking at the mastery tree, I'm not going to go over this whole massive thing because honestly, I don't think I really need to, but I'm going to hit on some important ones that I would recommend picking up. So of course, first ones are going to be fire damage, both on the Dragonkin and one of your mastery trees. That's going to give you up to 105% extra fire damage. And then sticking with the Dragonkin tree, we're going highly flammable. 30% chance to trigger lava blood. Since we have our molten veins going off constantly, we want to make sure we apply that lava blood always. That's going to allow us to benefit from set the world on fire for each foe within 3.5 meters affected by lava blood. Fire damage is increased by 5%. And then otherwise, I do pick up Too Hot to Handle. Boiling increases fire damage by an additional 15%. And then Man on Fire, the effect of Enkindled is tripled. Otherwise, jumping down to the Frost tree here, we pick up Alleviating Release. Rage Release increases health regeneration and mana regeneration by 400%, which is nice with the Molten Medallion. And then I pick up Cold Heritage. Rime and Frostskin now also apply the active effect of Frost. And then going up from there, I grab Shattering Hits, critical hit damage, of course. I would recommend putting into Reach. That way your magma, your molten veins can reach out further. That way you don't have to be as close to people. Otherwise, picking up cooldown reduction, movement speed, effect duration is good. I always go Challenger. I do Fortress, Elusive, and Bling is a must-have since we're using a lot of rare gear that has a lot of gems. Might as well get that extra 20% gem strength. And then, of course, like I said, fire damage. I go Overpower and then Frost damage just to boost those numbers up a little bit. And lastly, I do Master Pug. I can't say that second word. I'm not even going to try, but we do this for 25% brawl skill damage because our role is a brawl skill. So we get just an extra extra 25% damage to that skill. And then getting into the active skills that we use, looking at our bar here, we got Flame Roll on my right click, Glacier Roll on my right click, and also lastly Heart of Fire on my right click with Flame Wrath on my Q, Protector on my W, and Frostskin on my E. So you may be asking yourself, well, why do I have so many buttons bound to my right click? Well, the reason why is it's just easy. I mean, I hate to say it, it's just an easy way to live. I mean, the more effective skills you can get onto one button, the you're going to be able to min-max your damage output. So essentially, the way it works, too, just in case you're not aware of, is when you bind multiple skills to one button, it's going to use the farthest right skill first. That basically has priority. So in this case, we have Heart of Fire as a 14-second cooldown, so that's why it's on the far right. That way, every time it's off cooldown, it's going to get used. Granted, you could argue, well, on use, you're doing a damage, so you might not, you probably use it when you don't need to, but it doesn't do a whole lot of damage, and honestly, when it's off cooldown, I do want to use that whenever I can. But the biggest one here is Glacier Roll before Flame Roll. The reason why is since our Flame Roll has no cooldown, our Glacier Roll still has about a 3-second cooldown, which pairs well with our Moon Sun buff, which lasts for 3 seconds. So as soon as this comes off cooldown, I want to roll and use that. That way I proc the sun effect, tripling my fire damage. And then Flame Roll's just on the last button here, or the furthest left button. That way it has the least priority. And then getting into the other skills, I just run Q, Flame Wrath. I just find it easy to spam. W, don't really need to use this a whole lot just because, it's just a self-heal, and honestly, with the build that we got, since we don't have a lot of survivability with damage reduction and stuff like that, we're gonna find ourselves getting one shot more so than anything. And then lastly, we do frost skin on our E, and this is a good little combination because most of the time you're gonna be rolling, right? You want to keep moving, that way you don't die. However, there's a nice little combination where you can roll into a pack, quickly frost skin, freeze everything around you, and then just spam flame wrath safely, killing everything around you. So there's a fun little build here for you guys. All right, so that's gonna do it for this week's video, guys. Thanks for watching. I had a blast coming up with this build, and it actually spawned so many other builds for me, working around sets and stuff like that. But just using this item in particular with the ordinary hood and skull mask got me really rethinking how to play Chronicon. Instead of relying heavily on just a set and trying to get all this stuff working, it's nice to set back, put some weird parameters on it, and play a fun build just to see how far you can get. So that got me thinking, let's go ahead and make a challenge out of it. I want to see the Chronicon community take this item, specifically the ordinary cap, maybe even marry it with the skull mask like I did here, but I want to see you guys make a build. Doesn't matter if you're the Berserker, Warden, Crusader, or a Necromancer. I just want to see you guys try to make this build. Now, the stipulation is here, you could argue, put the rune on, you could take the ordinary cap, put the rune on an already okay build, and use it that way. But no, I want to see you guys use as many rare items as you possibly can, or as many non-set items as you possibly can, and make a build. Leave it in the comments on this video. Heck, you could even make your own video and send me the link. Post it to Reddit, call me out. I'm on there frequently on the Chronicon subreddit. So yeah, I mean, get it out there. Let me see what you guys got. I'm curious to see. I want to see you guys do better than me. I mean, currently I can do like a Mythic 7, Mythic 8 if I'm really trying with this build. So I want to see who and which class can get above that. So that's going to be it from me today, guys. Like always, take it easy. Tell someone you love them. Catch you in the next one.